Yeah, I became freelance like right on at March 2020. It was it was pretty hard. I lost my job like not like basically at the same time as the pandemic started. So there was this sense of like loss of like everything changing all at once. I was taking like any job I could at that point. Um, and yeah, having to work from home, um, I really like having my own separate space to do my work, so it was a little difficult creatively at first. It's very freeing to be able to do your own work, but it can also be a little scary, like not knowing when the next job's coming in, not having that job security, and being your own boss can be pretty hard. As a freelancer, you have to do many jobs in one. You have to be your own marketing manager, you have to be your own accountant, you have to do a lot of taxes, a lot of keeping track of a lot of things. It also takes a few years usually for it to become established and finally have a steady stream of income. So those first few years can be very difficult if you don't have a support system, don't have something to fall back on. And then if you're working more than one job, it can be difficult to find the time to do your own work, and finding the energy. So yeah, it can be hard. Social media is the hardest part for me that I would love to have someone do for me, especially because I don't do it very often, but I know it's a very important part of being an artist nowadays. It's a very important and like good resource, but it can be very exhausting and difficult and hard to follow the trends and like anticipate how well you're gonna do on Instagram. So yeah, I would love to have a social media manager. One of the main pluses for me for social media is how accessible it is nowadays to be successful as an artist. Now with social media, it's very easy to get inspired, but also meet a lot of your favorite artists, have that direct connection. Nowadays, you don't need to have your work in a gallery for many eyes to see it. All you have to do is connect with certain people. If your work touches someone, you know, all that needs to happen is social media. It can be a little difficult to like maintain it, but it can be very helpful, I think. Yeah, and I love the open communication that can happen on social media too. The fact that someone can communicate with their favorite artist, ask them questions, and usually the artist will answer back, I bet is like super valuable for artists that are up and coming. I think one of the biggest cons is the algorithm, trying to beat it, trying to take advantage of it. Right now the move is towards video content on TikTok and stuff, so having to adapt your work can be a bit difficult, but yeah, it's worthwhile to learn. Right now I'm working at least 9 to 5 every weekday, but a lot of long hours, extra time and some weekends and stuff, but the goal is to be able to just work 9 to 5, I guess, like, and not romanticize the grind. Many times when I want to start a new piece, it begins with getting inspired by something accidentally. So what I'll do is I'll go online and look for similar things. I'll search for color schemes and build them together. I'll take a lot of photos. My younger sister is kind of my model sometimes. I'll take pictures of her doing certain poses, and she's done that for years for me. And so, yeah, and that's how I usually get a lot of my reference. To me, when I was younger, I would notice that there weren't many Latina women in a lot of the TV shows and like cartoons I was watching. So that's, I think, what opened my eyes when I was younger. And since then, it's really helped to hear the perspectives of other people of color, especially online, about what their feelings are and like the advice they give, because many of them have like incredible advice and lessons and stuff to learn from. Representation is very important to me, but even more so is good representation. So I think a very important part is doing the research, and that can take more effort than just wanting to have representation in your art. And so, yeah, listening to many different perspectives, making sure that you're not falling into, what's the word for it? Harmful stereotypes. And yeah, just like approaching things with like earnestness and like love, I think, is a big thing. I try to do as much online research as I can, and a lot of Black artists, Indigenous artists are very vocal about like things they want other artists to learn from, and so the important thing is to listen, I think, and a lot of them will actually give you like free like lessons on Twitter and stuff about how to draw certain features and stuff. So yeah, I think just like learning from them and boosting them, I think is very important. One artist I would definitely recommend who I really admire is Abel Hayford. They do a lot of Black characters, and they have a lot of free lessons on how to draw different skin types, different skin tones, lighting, things like that. They're a very talented character designer. And the other resource I would suggest is going on Gumroad or other sites that have free or paid models, and trying to purposefully search for models that aren't thin and white, and learning from them, and yeah, using them in your work. Yeah, so my background is my parents are Colombian. They met in Bogota in Colombia, and they moved here to Boston a couple of years before I was born, so I was raised here. And a lot of what inspires me is going back to Colombia and seeing the people and traveling to different places, and how that connects to how I live here. Yeah, I think my relationship with Spanish is complicated because it feels like home to me to listen to it, but there's many times as a person who's speaks more English that it can be hard to say what I want to say in Spanish. So it feels a little bit like a loss to have to speak English all the time because my Spanish isn't as good as I want it to be. And I think that's a struggle that a lot of Latinos in the US feel, especially ones that were born here, that they want to speak more Spanish, but maybe only understand it, or it can be hard to say what they want to say, and they feel like they're losing that connection, I think. One moment that really struck out to me was watching Into the Spider-Verse with Miles Morales. There was a moment where he was preparing to go to school, and he was getting ready and stuff, and seeing the dynamic in his house with his mom speaking Spanish and Spanglish basically, it really felt like something like from my own house, which is something I don't see very often. So yeah, more natural Spanglish, I think, would be great. I would love to see more stories featuring Latino characters, I believe. Encanto was like a good step forward, I think, but I would love to see that more of it, more perspectives, more immigrant stories living in the US, things like that. And yeah, more robot stories would be great. Yeah, I've had my like robot phase. There was a little robot character I had for a while that I would just go back to and draw all the time. And I did a college project on that character. But other than that, I've had like a cowgirl phase where I was drawing cowgirls a lot. Another one is over in October, I drew a vampire every day for the whole month, and so yeah, I had a vampire phase as well. But yeah, I think a lot of my inspiration though comes from sci-fi, Star Wars in particular, ships and robots. I think the biggest barrier for artists is definitely economically. It can be difficult to get started working on your own. especially for the first few years, unless you have like a lucky break, to be able to support yourself while trying to find work. And if you're working more than one job that's not art related, it can be hard to find the time, the energy to do your artwork, I think. Unfortunately, like a lot of internships that are unpaid, it requires a certain amount of privilege to be able to take those unpaid internships. And a lot of times that's the foothold you need to get into the industry sometimes. So yeah, if someone doesn't have enough money to be able to do that, it can be more difficult. Some resources in order to thrive and have like a balanced life is definitely support, money, time, and energy, I think. To be able to not feel like you're starving or to feel safe in order to create your art, I think. That way that you have, that safety in order to feel like you can create whatever you want without worrying about where your next paycheck is coming from. What they're doing here at Western Avenue is great. Keeping rent low for artists to be able to have their own studio space is really important. And then I'd also like to see more resources for kids who are curious about becoming artists, to be able to get more experience in drawing from life, learning from artists, being able to build their portfolio so they can get into any school if they want to go to school for it. More resources like that I think would be incredible. I think artists should be supporting each other. There's so many ways that artists can support each other, whether it's boosting their work on social media, giving them jobs. Another thing I think is really important is I think art directors should be more proactive in searching for artists of color, artists like going out of their comfort zone, I think, and doing the work of going into finding their portfolios and stuff. I think it would be just great for everyone involved. One thing I really love, the way you can search for artists is on Twitter. They'll have a lot of hashtags where artists will display their work for a day. For example, hashtag portfolio day or hashtag drawing while black are both two hashtags that are really important. I really recommend art directors look through those tags to find new artists to work for them. And then another site I really want to call out is lightbox.info. They compile a lot of artists' past work and how much they were paid. And I really feel like that information should be widely spread to other artists so that we can get paid fairly. It's actually something, pricing my work is something I'm still actually learning. And I think that's going to be a long learning process. Because I think it's difficult to price your work for many different reasons. One, because it's something that's so personal to you. Some of your work it's hard to put a price tag on it, but also it can be difficult to value yourself than what you're really worth. You might think you're pricing something too high, but you have to take into account getting paid an hourly wage, the materials you cost, how much emotional energy you put into your work. So it can be a tricky road, but I think if artists work together to be transparent about how much things cost and how much they're charging, it'll be fairer for artists to get paid what they deserve. My name is Daniela Gamba, and I'm a digital illustrator.